Hello, hello. Hi, welcome. I'm Theo. I'm the founder of Warm Street. We're a culture-first communications agency, and we've been really fortunate over the last 10 years to be working with some of the brilliant brands about. I want to talk today just about the use of the word culture in culture marketing. It feels like one of the most overused words in our lexicon, and I want to talk about why I think we should be nervous about the overuse of the word culture, the impact it can have on us as culture marketeers, and how we stand out in an increasingly saturated market. We're here today to learn about how to be less boring, and I think we're getting into a world in culture marketing where a lot of it can feel quite the same. There's a lot of brands clamoring for noise in a very congested and saturated marketplace. So I want to play a little game, which is about who's heard this buzzword recently. Okay, we want to be embedded in culture. We want to move at the pace of culture. Everyone wants to move at the pace of culture. I think I've said that as well. Pierce the cultural zeitgeist. That came in a brief last week. Lead the cultural conversation. Everyone also wants to lead the cultural conversation. This is a bit of a dig, but we're a creative, cross it out, put culture agency. So as we can see, the industry has shifted quite a lot. We've got creative agencies and PR agencies that have traditionally dealt in creative. They're moving into culture. We've got social agencies that moved into culture. You've got culture agencies being built on the side of culture businesses, whether that's festivals, agents, management, or labels. So there's a lot of competition in the space. There's definitely been a bit of a cultural crescendo. Some examples of stuff I've seen recently that I thought was quite interesting. AJ Tracey delivered his new album to fans via Deliveroo. I would never have thought to see him dress up in a Deliveroo outfit delivering to fans. Tesco's recently launched an 80s-themed nightclub called Club Card. Budweiser, I don't know if you saw at Cannes. They won. They're apparently the beer behind music, but they also promote the fact they spent £0 on music rights and paying artists. And they won a Cannes Lion for it too. So we've got some examples of where it's not being done or culture is being treated in maybe some unethical ways, I would say. But then we've got some iconic work, right? Currys staging Pitbull pop-ups to try and sell worldwide plug adapters. It's fucking genius and it's brilliant. We love it. So we've also got some moments that are pretty wild. I read this amazing article online, and they pointed this out. In Succession, which is arguably the biggest example of corporate hellscape when it comes to buzzwords and terminology, we've got all these quotes from Kendall. I might need you to check my cultural temperature. Fuck the weather, we're changing the cultural climate. And Shiv then says, who can give me a read legally and culturally? It's being used everywhere, it's oversaturated. And the person who wrote the article is called Martin Weigel. It's a really good one. I can share it to anyone who's interested afterwards. It says, culture is used as a careless gesture, a wave in the vague direction of an undefined out there. It's just kind of out there, isn't it? And he said there's a lot of that same vague waving in marketing and communication circles. So why does this matter? Well, there are two theories that I think are quite interesting. You've got Baudrillard's. He looks like an absolute G, by the way. I love him. He's got a simulation theory, which basically says that when you reference a word without the underpinning behind it, it becomes like a simulation. You've probably seen it online, right? People saying we live in a simulation. It's generally used to describe Donald Trump, but there is a sense of if you keep on using the word culture, we say we're operating within it without necessarily doing the deeper work. There's this kind of general erosion of trust. And audiences that generally don't no longer know what's real or what's performative. And then you've got Jacobowicz's semantic saturation theory. He looks like a G as well. But he's basically talking about the sense of when you get an exposure to a word time and time again, it just becomes hollow and meaningless. And that's quite interesting. And we've seen it. I think a good example might be the word woke. That's definitely changed in terms of its terminology. So I think there's something to consider there. And as marketers, we've got to pay attention to it. So when did culture become the advertising world's shiny new word? There's been a bit of a linguistic shift over the last 7 years. It started with kind of Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, talking about ESG. So this was all about businesses and brands had to invest in society, they had to make a difference, they had to play a role in culture. Swiftly followed on by Nike. I think that was a really good example of kind of one of the bigger pieces around social impact and purpose. That kick-started that movement. We then went into COVID. I think brands increasingly became entertainers. Culture moved online and digital. TikTok passed 1 billion monthly users back then. That was in 2020. And then coming out of that, we had this massive rampant explosion of brands working in culture and also hiring. So you had Apple hiring global heads of culture. You had cultural strategists in-house at brands. You had global head of cultural collaborations. It was through and through. So we're now in this really exciting place where brands are really becoming entertainers, and they're playing a really important role in culture and being part of it. And it's really penetrating up into kind of boardroom level and getting into C-suite. So that's an exciting place to be. This is also a graph of the the search terms for culture marketing over the last 5 years, which have kind of gone up by about 500% as well. And so whilst the energy and innovation is definitely palpable, so is the ambiguity. And I guess in summary, when we use culture as a catch-all term, we risk undermining the principles of culture marketing that made it effective in the first place. It was all about differentiation. It was all about being different. And whilst other brands tried to sell you a product benefit, a culture marketer would sell you a passion or a lifestyle benefit too. And we risk eroding our audience's trust. So there's some challenges which I'm going to talk through, and I'll talk through some solutions too. Number one is you're part of the pack. Now, none of this is to say that any of this work is not good work. I think this work is brilliant. But as you can see, within a year, you've had Smirnoff, Ray-Ban, Coke, Oakley, all named creative or culture kind of directors, which is really interesting. So you might have a brilliant idea, only to find that actually a load of people who are all trying to target your audience are doing the same thing. When the playbook is being used by everyone, how does your brand message stand out? Another one, which is a little bit more cutting, and this is something that I took from a LinkedIn post, but it did stick with me. This is after the Duolingo owl faked its own death. That happened. And there's a kind of corporate outpouring of kind of like cosplayed grief from different brands on social. And the commentator said this: major brands desperately vying for relevance through forced dad jokes and manufactured sadness over a fictional character. I guess that watching these billion-dollar companies trade strained puns with affecting mourning over fake emotional moments is a perfect microcosm of our algorithmic hellscape. It's bad, isn't it? But there is something to learn here, which I think this person also said. What I'm seeing is a rapid decline of all of this into brand soup, which is a great term, where every voice becomes indistinguishable from the next. I fucking love this. It always makes me laugh, and I really like how different brands bring their own personality to certain moments in kind of social and community marketing. But there is a point that we're all kind of doing the same thing, and we need to try and stand out to differentiate. Challenge number 2 is called the algorithmic doom loop. So this is when we focus on short culture only, when we focus on trends and things that move. We don't build for the future, and we get these dopamine hits that kind of allow us to like go into like performance reports and stuff and say we're doing really well, but we're not actually building long-term sustainable cultural IP that can grow and invest with a brand. So it's almost like being on a treadmill of social metric dopamine hits. Monthly impressions are through the roof. We've got need for speed, the viral edition, a sense of relevance, but we can be forgotten in a scroll. And I think that's really important. When everything is ephemeral and we're chasing clout online, we also don't kind of invest into the stuff that really makes us spoken about and remembered as a brand. A good example here in terms of a brand that's done it really well, obviously, is Red Bull. But if you think about Culture Clash, that came back after a decade hiatus, and it was the talk of the town. And that's what I mean when I say we can get stuck on like short-term work and fast culture, and we forget to invest into the slow culture that really builds our purpose and our brand affinity and definition. Challenge number 3, hello darkness, my old friend. I think I'm all alone again. A brand that does culture marketing really well is Stone Island, and they've created a poem called The Compass Inside. I won't read it all, but I will read like 4 lines from it, which is, we do not seek inspiration from others. Inspiration comes from within. We follow the compass inside. And this is all about building your strategy before you step into it, because what happens is culture moves fast. Opportunities come in thick and fast. You say yes to one thing, you say yes to something else, and then somewhere, somehow, you've forgotten who you are and what you mean to people. And that's really important. I think you can jump from trend to trend. You never know when to say no or how to say no. You lose your distinctiveness. So I think, here you go at the end, quarterly pivot. We've all done it, but I do think there's an element of looking inside, getting alignment, and then being very focused and clear in how you move forward. We ignore the margins. This is really important for me personally, and I think it is forgotten as culture marketing becomes mainstream. Culture is built from marginalized communities. It always has been. It still is. If you look at what's taking place around the world, it's definitely like something we need to be aware of. When we step into culture and we don't educate ourselves enough, then I do think there's a risk that those who have created those cultural spaces in the first place in those communities don't get acknowledgement, they don't get invested into, and we don't build our society for the better. So I think it's really important to understand the communities created and the challenges at the heart of their existence, especially if as a brand we're going to profit from that. And of course, we can misstep. And I think these are good examples. The Budweiser is a really good example because at the end of the day, they would not have put that in if they knew that 70% of musicians earn over 20 grand a year, right? You just wouldn't. So there's an element of like, you can work in culture and not necessarily know the challenges of the people whose culture you're trying to profit from. So how are we going to find the way through all of this? I think you can segment your strategy and allot your budget pots. There's slow culture and there's fast culture. Slow culture is culture that's built over time through trust, craft, community, and intentionality. We think about long-term equity plays. We think about brand building. We think about smart partnerships. We think about building IP that people come to you for. Red Bull Culture Clash is a great example of that. And then there's fast culture, and that's really fucking important. You sharpen every life. You make an impact. You make people smile. You're there with them on the journey. But that's short form. It's speed-driven. It's stuff that moves at the pace of culture. Segment your strategy, work out what's needed in different places, and go from there. Just as a point, we didn't start this just to chase memes. Let's try and build some interesting stuff too. I think that's really important. Be something to someone, go back to Stone Island, follow the compass inside, learn to say no. A lot of it is actually saying no to the wrong opportunities for you. But listen carefully, go deep with an audience, learn what's impacting them and how you can impact their lives in too. Drive mass participation. The world's pretty fucked. How can you make it better? How can you think about campaigning above campaigns, making people believe in our message too? Can we fucking stand for something, please? That's really important. Remember that niche can be mass too. Emerging scenes, cities, and spaces. Remember your investment, and they need your support. We've worked in some regional cities recently, and it's just incredible, like how hungry they are for brand activations and how much they like respond well to it. London, it's happening every single week. It's saturated. People are bored. Spend as much time working inwards as you do outwards. Really learn to educate work to educate the C-suite. Think about cultural solutions for commercial challenges. What's a business problem? How can I build a cultural solution that's going to excite consumers and shift the needle as well? And be really clear about how you're going to measure that and play it back. Educate on the theory. Educate on the ethics. Like, this is people's lives, its values, its passions. Bring in outside voices. You don't have to do it yourself. That could be bringing in a collective that's amazing, that's at the cutting edge of culture, to work with your internal marketing teams about a project. It could be bringing in consultants to educate on D&I. It could be bringing in other consultants to educate on the power of culture marketing. But it doesn't all have to sit with you, and sometimes having someone else in the room is really important. And one final word of warning from me is just that, like, whilst it's a word on everyone's lips, culture came from and still comes from the margins of our society. So when you work in culture, I really don't believe you can either opt in or opt out when it suits you. I think you have to be happy to have hard conversations, and it means thinking about your social impact and how you make the world a better place. It might mean that you're having to fight to support gay pride 365 days a year, even though woke is out, or that you have to fight for your business and corporation to take a stance on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. It's not easy work. It can be very tiring, but it's really good work, and we're really privileged to be able to do it. And we have the privilege to affect great change and change lives and change opinions. So let's try and be worthy of that privilege today and tomorrow. Thank you. That was very nice.